This is Big Tasty Sports. We're back with another week of NFL futures bets. I gotta say, this is something I wasn't actually planning on doing at the beginning of the season, but I have really been enjoying it. To me, this feels sports betting in general has a lot of correlation to the stock market, trying to, buy low, sell high, reading to the direction that teams are moving, all that kind of stuff. Doing that in the futures market feels even more so to be the case to me with that, where you really want to look for the opportunities to buy into teams where the line's going to move in your favor. You always want to do that with any bet. Obviously, you want to get positive CLV, but I think the swings can be more significant in the futures market. So I'm really enjoying it so far. If this is something you enjoy, then hopefully this can give you some good things to think about. And if you hate futures, then you probably don't want to keep watching this video. The first thing I want to do, and I think I'll do this moving forward until, certainly we get to a point somewhere in the season where we're not doing futures anymore, somewhere around the halfway point, I would imagine. So we got a few more weeks where futures should be viable. But what I want to do first is go over the picks that I shared last week. I had 4 in the futures market and see how those moved just with 1 week. And this week, there's 2 of them that had pretty significant movement, one that stayed about the same, and another one that moved against me, actually. And so we'll talk a little bit about why that happened. And with the one that moved against me in particular, if I still think that's a good bet, then actually, just like with stocks, if I buy into a stock and it continues to move against me, I didn't get the absolute low, then that's something where I might want to add more of a position to change my cost basis. And so I'll talk about whether that's the case with this bet or not, and if I'm going to do that now or if I'm waiting on it. So the first bet from last week was Denver to miss the playoffs. Obviously, they have Indianapolis come in, another team that's really struggling. They play a really shitty game and end up losing in overtime. So this one had a pretty huge line move. Last week, I bought into Denver to miss the playoffs at minus 112. Now it stands at minus 290, a line that I would not want to play anymore. Not because I don't think, I feel as certain as ever they're not going to make the playoffs, but obviously just a huge line move. So that one, go in the direction that we thought. I do think that Denver is a team, if you really want to do a parlay of some teams to miss the playoffs, I'm not going to go through the other teams that I think could be good because that's not where I want to focus for this video, podcast, whatever. But I think this is a team that you could still consider including. With the news now that Russell Wilson's hurt too, maybe that's part of the reason he's been so bad, though there's some evidence out there that just his reads have been really bad as well. So anything under minus 300, I think, is parlayable still. So that's something you could go look at if you want. But this one obviously was a good spot for us to get in. Second one from last week was Baltimore over 10.5 wins. They obviously got a win in a very close game against Cincinnati, and this line, I imagine, would have stayed the same or even moved against me a little bit if they had lost that game. But this one from plus 115 is where I got in. It's now minus 135, and I still feel really good about that. I still think Baltimore is a team that's going to continue to improve, and as long as Lamar Jackson doesn't get hurt, I think they have the offense to potentially compete with most of the teams in the league. So they're going to be in pretty much every game, and I still like this bet quite a bit. Even at minus 135, I wouldn't hate it. I'm not getting in for more units at minus 135, and so I'm not going to tell you to either. But if you look at the rest of their schedule and, like me, you think that they end up around 12 wins, then this is something you might want to still consider. The next one is the one that didn't really move at all. We have Kansas City and Philadelphia to win the division from plus 109 to plus 107. Now, when I'm recording this video, it's Monday. Kansas City hasn't played yet. If they go out and throttle the Raiders tonight, I imagine that this gets some movement. But the other piece of this, the Philly side, they had a relatively uninspiring performance against an Arizona team that has not played very well so far this year. And so I don't think that increased the value of their stock or the way people view them as a team. And then the other big thing about this one is that Dallas went and handily beat the Rams. And Dallas is looking like a team that is for real, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And if they start getting healthier on offense, I think most people are giving them a huge upgrade when Dak finally does come back. And right now, Dallas only has one loss. Philly is undefeated. And they play each other next week. I think it's Sunday Night Football that Dallas and Philly play. Should be a really fun game. And so you could say, hey, if the cost is still pretty much the same as where I bet it, is this one where I'm going to get in for more? And what I'm going to say is I do really still feel good about Philadelphia winning this division. They have the easier schedule than Dallas overall, though Dallas's schedule is not crazy. If they were to win both games against Philly, this could get to be a really tight division, which I would not love because I have a lot of bets on Philly to win the division. However, I do think if Dallas goes and beats Philadelphia, this is the reason I'm not going to get in for more right now. After that, Dallas has Detroit, then Chicago, then a bye. So if they win on Sunday, I think they're going to run off 3 more wins in a row. And after week 8, I think both of these teams would be 7-1 because Philly has a couple pretty easy games too. I didn't write down who they were, but it was a couple pretty easy teams. So if both of these teams are 7-1 after week 8, there's no way that Philly's odds to win the division, I think it's -2 or minus, I'd have to go look. Sorry, I don't remember what it is right now, but I think those odds certainly come down. And if I want to get in more on anything with Philly to win the division, I'm going to get a lot better line after week 8 than I am right now. So I'm going to just leave this one alone and not do more with it. The last one is the one that moved against me, and that was Jacksonville to win the division. Obviously, when you have the perceived to be the worst team in the league, or certainly one of them, in the Houston Texans come in and beat you at home, look pretty terrible. Trevor Lawrence overall, I mean, I didn't watch the whole game, but some of the pieces that I watched, he didn't look inspiring. So this went from +175, where I bet it last week, now to +230. And in most places, both Tennessee and Indianapolis are favored over Jacksonville to win the division now, which is really shocking to me, especially with Indianapolis. I guess I kind of get it with Tennessee. And so this is another one where you could say, hey, if from 175 to 230, I still think Jacksonville has a reasonably good opportunity to win this division, am I going to bet more on it now? And this is another one where I'm going to say that I'm going to wait. And here's why. After week 8, I think it is very likely Tennessee has a really easy schedule right now. The next 2 games they have are very winnable, and then they have a bye. And so I think the probability is over 50%, 65, 70%, that Tennessee after week 8 is going to be 5-2. I think Jacksonville has a real opportunity to be 4-4. And so if that's the case, 4-4, 5-2, I'm going to get something likely even better than 230 after week 8 betting on Jacksonville. Tennessee's schedule gets a lot harder after they come back from their bye. And while I am more bullish on Tennessee than I was at the beginning of the season, I still don't think they're a great team by any means. Just go look and see who they've beaten and how they've beaten them. This is a mediocre to a little bit below average team, I still think, that has decent coaching and has some good veteran experience. So I still think Jacksonville has a really good chance to win this division. But I think if I wait until after week 8, I can maybe even get +275, +300. And that's the spot where I would be more interested in taking this because the line will be better. All right, that's the review of the 4 bets that I placed last week. Always want to be open about those and just give thoughts. The futures market is different than week to week. If I lose a bet week to week, I can talk about why I think it lost, but it's over. Where these futures bets obviously are not over. And so I think there's a little bit more intrigue to kind of talking about them and seeing where we're at with another week of information. All right, so this week I actually have 5 bets. Only 2 that I would maybe as strongly to encourage you to take or to consider. I'm never going to say you should take something, but to consider at least. 2 that are on teams, and then I actually have 3 that are on awards for the season, 2 players and 1 for coach of the year. Those are at much longer odds, and there again, I'm more than looking for exactly what I think will win. I'm looking for value. What do I think has a better chance to win than what the odds are saying? So that said, let's jump into the 2 teams first and get those out of the way. The first one I'm taking this one for 2 units. My normal Futures play, I go between 1 and 2 units, so that's not uncommon for me to do, but I like this play. Indianapolis to miss the playoffs, plus 110. So here we're talking again about, we were just talking about Jacksonville and Tennessee, and these are the teams we're looking at: Jacksonville, Tennessee, Indianapolis. I think it is crazy that Indianapolis is being valued at all just because they went and beat Denver in a terrible game. They still looked like trash, and Denver has looked like trash. Now, I know the thing that always scares me is Indianapolis always starts out slow in the season, and then they come on as the season progresses, and that could be the case. But I think that this team has serious problems. So when I look through the schedule, and I talked about this last week, where I try to create a floor, a ceiling, and a projection. My floor for Indianapolis is 3-13-1. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is where this is why I have a projection. I don't think that's where they end up. But when I look at games that I think they win for sure, there aren't many. I gave them Houston at the end of the season, and that's the only game, looking at the rest of their schedule, where I would say I feel confident that they should win that game. And even that one is probably not a lock, but I'll give them that one. Then as far as the ceiling, I have their ceiling at 7-9-1. I don't think a team that's 7-9-1 is going to win this division, even though this division is pretty bad overall. I won't walk through every game on their schedule, but just go look at it. The only other game that maybe you could give them is Washington. They have Washington at home, and that is definitely a winnable game for them. But I have 9 losses for them, and then 4 that I think could go either way. So my projection for Indianapolis ended up at 5-11-1, maybe 6-10-1. But I just don't think they're going to get there. Where I have Jacksonville projected at 9-8. So this is again where I would say I have Indianapolis's ceiling at 7 wins, and I have Jacksonville at 9-8 for a projection. And then let's look at Tennessee. I have them right now projected for 7-10, but I do have their ceiling at 9-8. So again, I think that Jacksonville is still positioned well to win this division, but I think that Tennessee is the much more likely team to step up and win it just by a game or two, more than Indianapolis. So to give me plus money on Indianapolis to not make the playoffs is a bet that I really like, and that's why I have 2 units on it. The next one up is Houston's team total under 3.5 wins. A big part of the reason that I jumped on this one is that I got it at plus 140. And I got this on FanDuel. This is another thing I'll look for, is FanDuel is plus 140, and DraftKings and other places it was only plus 110. So this is a really good line on this bet as well. Houston's getting some love because they went and beat Jacksonville, and that was a good win. Good for them, right? So now they have 1 win. You look through the rest of their schedule, and I don't know where to say that they are going to win a game. I do have 5 games that are toss-ups to me. They have Tennessee at home, at the Giants, Washington at home, at Tennessee, and at Indianapolis. If you want to throw Jacksonville at home in there as another possible win, that's fine. I give you that. That's 6. So I have them with 1 game that I think they win for sure, which is the one that they already won. 10 games that I think they lose, and 5 that are a toss-up. So I have their floor at 1-15-1, their ceiling at 6-10-1, and their projection at 2-14-1. So I have them projected for 2 wins. Here I can get up to 3, still at plus 140. If this was even money, I might be a little bit more hesitant because of some of those toss-up games and the fact that Houston has looked kind of okay, especially on defense. But you're giving me plus 140, and they can get 2 more wins on this season. I like that bet. So that is the second one that I took. Just took that for 1 unit. These next 3 that are the awards or props, I am only taking for half a unit because the odds are so long. And these are ones where I will potentially look to add in other people on these same things if the odds look good. So I'm only doing half a unit on these. The first one I took was Dameon Pierce to have the most rushing yards at plus 1,400. So right now, Dameon Pierce is 4th in the league with 412 rushing yards. Nick Chubb leading the pack by quite a bit at 593. He obviously has a big lead. Saquon Barkley, 533. Miles Sanders, 414, and Derrick Henry, 408. So there is a big drop-off from Chubb and Barkley to everyone else. We know that Cleveland and New York are teams that want to run the ball, and so Chubb and Barkley are going to continue to get a lot of opportunity. There's no doubt. And I think that it's very likely that one of those two would win, which is what the odds say for most rushing yards. But here's the reason why I think there's value on Dameon Pierce right now. Both the Giants and the Browns have had relatively easy schedules so far, and their schedules get a lot tougher. So they have been able to amass a lot of rushing yards against teams that have bad rushing defenses. The Chargers versus the Browns is a great example from this last week. Now, certainly they'll face some other rushing defenses that aren't killer, but overall, that strength of schedule is going to step up quite a bit. And so I don't expect either of them to continue to be able to run the ball at exactly the pace that they've run it so far. On the other hand, I think Dameon Pierce, these numbers are skewed a little bit because in week one, Rex Burkhead was given so much of the work that it was almost like he got docked a week or half a week of work. I think he would definitely be up higher in third place on this list if it wasn't for week one. Chubb and Barkley also both have some injury history, so I think there's definitely an opportunity that they get injured. There is for anyone. Pierce could get injured as well. The last thing that I'm going to say about this is to look at the attempts. And this goes back to what I said about Dameon Pierce in week one. Chubb has what he has on 98 rushing attempts. Barkley has 97 rushing attempts. One reason I don't like Derrick Henry, actually, is that he has 104 attempts with 408 yards. He's in fifth. That's a reason I wouldn't jump onto him because his yards per carry is not as good. Dameon Pierce only has 86 attempts. Now, Miles Sanders only has 87, but I don't see Miles Sanders' carries increasing significantly, where I can definitely see the carries increasing for Dameon Pierce. So if he has the carries continue to increase, I think he is, right now, I would say he's the third most likely to win this, the most rushing yards. But at plus 1,400, I also think he is where the value lies. So that's my first half unit future is Dameon Pierce, most rushing yards. Next one, definitely a long shot, but it's Geno Smith, comeback player of the year, plus 2,000. Now, certainly one of the things we have to get out of the way right from the beginning is to say, is he even someone who could receive this award? Some people might say, hey, he's been in the league. He just hasn't been playing because he's been a backup. So can he be the comeback player of the year? Well, that goes, I guess, to how people interpret that, the people that vote on it. But I definitely think because he hasn't been playing and now is coming back as a starter, this is something he's certainly eligible for. In fact, one of the things that points that out to me, and one of the reasons that I ended up taking a half unit shot on this bet is at FanDuel, he is only plus 600 to win comeback player of the year. Think about that discrepancy, 1,400 points different between FanDuel and DraftKings and one other book on this bet. I think it was Bet Online that also had it at plus 2,000. Now, FanDuel may just be way off, but the fact that they would even list it at that tells me that there is some value on this. Geno Smith has been tearing it up. The biggest problem for the Seahawks is that they have had no defense, and their offense has struggled against the really good defenses that they've faced. But so far, what we're seeing in their division is that San Francisco is the only team that has a really good defense, and they already faced San Francisco once. So they only have to play them one more time. They're going to get into shootouts with a lot of other teams, and the thing that would make this even more possible is for the Seahawks to make the playoffs. Now, I actually don't think that they make the playoffs. That's a bet that I looked at, and I'm not willing to move on because I have them out of the playoffs by 2 games, which is just too much for me to make a bet there. But I think there is a long shot possibility, if their defense could come around at all, that this is a team that has enough upside to potentially make the playoffs. And if that's the case, I think Geno vaults to the front of the line here. Right now, Saquon Barkley is leading the way. In this category, I think that he is plus 300. Or no, it's not even that. I think he's close to even money on this one. Go check me out on that. I could be off, but from my memory, he's around even money. Now, that's understandable because the Giants are doing really well, and he is absolutely the one leading the resurgence, and he's had all the injuries and is coming back, and he should be the front runner for a comeback player of the year. There's no doubt. But again, He could get injured. He's a running back. Running backs get injured. And number two, the Giants' schedule gets a lot harder. And so I think that the even odds on that partly look at the potential for the Giants to make the playoffs as well. Again, this is a long shot. If this was even money, I wouldn't be playing it. But at plus 2,000, do you think there's some value on Geno for comeback player of the year? I'm going to say up front, this last bet hurts me a little bit to pull the trigger on it. It's for coach of the year. And I feel like coach of the year has a lot to do with the obstacles that the coach of a winning team pulls off. I do not necessarily think that it is the best coach in a given year. And what I'm about to say is not someone I think is by any means even close to the best coach. In fact, the bet I'm not taking is Brian Daboll to win this at plus 600. And the reason I'm not is that I think there's a good chance the Giants fall off a decent amount the rest of the year because of the uptick in their strength of schedule. But that man has been one hell of a coach so far. The fact that they beat the Packers in London, that they're off to the start they are, huge props to him. And I think he probably will be the one who deserves to win this award for what he's doing with a team that has very limited talent. So again, Brian Daboll, probably the best coach in the league to this point in the year. But this is about the odds to me and what I think is going to happen with these teams. So the bet I'm taking is Mike McCarthy for coach of the year at plus 2,000. I do not think Mike McCarthy is a great coach. However, I think the market will overall look at the fact that Dak was out for a significant period of time, and that in that time, the Cowboys only improved in 1 games. And they're going to look at that as a huge obstacle that was overcome. I also think that, I said this earlier, I dramatically undervalued the Cowboys with how good they actually are, and especially how good that defense is. If that defense can stay healthy and continue to create havoc like they have been, this is a team that I have upgraded significantly in terms of what I think their win total is. In fact, right now I have them projected at 12-5, and I have their ceiling at 15-2. Really, all that's saying is that I don't see them being underdogs or being in games they can't win the rest of the season. The closest I would say is this week at Philly. And they're hot right now. So I think, again, that's going to be a close game. But I have their projection at 12-5. I had them projected for, I think, just 7 or 8 wins a few weeks ago. Now, that could be that my projection was just dog shit, and I'm willing to admit that, or maybe this one is. But I more think it's that the Cowboys actually are better than we thought they were, or better than I thought they were. And so if the Cowboys find a way to win 12, 13, 14 games in the regular season, if they even find a way to leapfrog Philadelphia and win this division, I think people are going to be all over the Cowboys for sure. And I think it will put Mike McCarthy, who is not a great coach, in a position to potentially win coach of the year. And at plus 2,000, I'm willing to take that chance. All right, those are the futures bets for this week. If you have any questions or thoughts, absolutely drop those in the comments or hit me up on Twitter at NBA Attack with 1A. If you're watching the video, it's right down there in the corner. Also, I would definitely appreciate it a ton if you're watching the video, if you could give it a like, subscribe to the channel, continuing to put out content every week, and looking at what the schedule will be like for NBA to get some content out as well. If you're listening to the podcast, go rate and review the podcast. I would appreciate that. Best of luck to you on all your bets. We'll be back on Wednesday with the Best Bets show, and next week with another futures show as well. Have a good one, everybody.